Hello Rebel and welcome back to my life. You know how sometimes I tend to overthink things? Buckle the fuck up. So as you have heard me mention in the past, I have what is known as a Discord server. And if you haven't heard me mention that in the past, it's true. And if you don't know what a Discord server is, well, you're not alone. It's kind of a new thing and not everyone has dived headfirst into it. A Discord server is not a new social media site. Well, it kind of isn't. I mean, really, I feel like the definition of social media is a little flexible depending on who's using it and what context it's in. Like some people call YouTube a social media platform, which I think is just not helpful to me at all personally, but if it helps you, great. But then it's like, okay, does social media even have a rigid definition?
Rigid.
Anyway, Discord is essentially a chat room program. If you were around on the early internet days of the 90s and 2000s, you know all about chat rooms. We all saw things in those days that we will likely never unsee. Storytime. When I was a teenager, I played a lot of StarCraft, and I was in some in-game StarCraft chat rooms where I would talk to other people about the game. And one day, someone came into my chat room and said, hit Alt F4 for Kerrigan nudes. And because I was, as I said, a young teenage boy and neither very intelligent nor very much in control of my more basic instincts, I did it. And if you've never discovered this before, Alt F4 is a key command that will close whatever program you're using on your computer at the time. So in my attempt to see some Zerg boobies, I just kicked myself out of StarCraft. And you have to understand that this was the funniest thing that had ever happened to me. This was the height of internet humor at the time. Listen, memes didn't exist, okay? YouTube wasn't around. There was no Vine. There was no connective tissue to even enable things to go viral. And so we didn't have the constant social filtering that sends the funniest pictures in human history catapulting across the human collective consciousness, like we do today. All we had was chat rooms, and Discord is a new community tool that essentially lets you have and maintain your own chat room that can also have sub-chat rooms within the broader whole. And I've had my Discord server for a while now and had many experiences with it, and my big takeaway from all those experiences is that Discord is a new system of internet feudalism. Now, at first blush, you might think that applies to all social media, but I really don't think it does. Even the biggest accounts on the biggest social media platforms still don't have a great deal of power within the platform itself. They are still heavily restricted by the platform's terms of service. And what's more important for this particular discussion, they don't have borders. There is no clear defining line or barrier between Lady Gaga's Twitter account and Barack Obama's. And the same is true for Facebook or any other social media platform I have experience with. But Discord is different, and this is why I don't really consider it as a social media platform. Discord is composed of servers. People like me create servers and bring in their friends or community to that server. And when you own a server, you essentially become the Baron, and that server is your barony. You hold absolute power within your tiny domain, or not so tiny if your server gets bigger. There are around 300 people in the Legacy Book server. The Fortnite server has over 300,000. That seems astronomical to me, and it might to you. But 300,000 is a tiny membership compared to Twitter. And 300,000 followers on a social media platform isn't even seen as that large these days. I mean, I feel like people don't even consider you a serious YouTuber unless you've hit the 1 million subscriber mark. Speaking of which, smash that subscribe button and punch that motherfucking bell! The other big difference between Discord and social media is that each server, or barony, is actually separate from every other. You can be a member of many servers, of course, but you can only be in one server at any one time. If you follow two different people on Twitter, you will see their posts together on your homepage. Twitter actually tries to combine all your Twitter interests into a singular experience. Discord does the opposite. There isn't really any such thing as a home page. There is a list of servers, and you are always choosing which one to be in at any one time. And in each server, you are bound by the rules of that server, but there are almost no universal Discord rules. Server owners, or barons, really are almost unlimited in what they can do. You're not allowed to do anything illegal, such as distribute illegal images or make tangible threats of physical violence, but that's because of the law and not a unique aspect of using Discord, unlike on sites like Twitter and Facebook, where you are theoretically not allowed to do things like promote hate speech or harass people. And you might face consequences from the website itself for doing so even though what you're doing might technically be legal. Of course, a lot of the time, sites like Facebook and Twitter don't actually enforce the terms of service that they claim to have, but that's the topic for another video. By the way, this is one reason Discord is even distinct from a site like Reddit, which otherwise shares many similarities with its system of subreddits that function like chat rooms in many ways. But not only does Reddit try to do the usual social media trick of combining all your subreddits into a single feed you can consume all at once, but the site does have universal rules beyond the rules each subreddit maintains for itself. And in this way, it's more like the United States, with federal laws that are true across the board, and then millions of states within it, each of which have their own set of laws that still can't supersede the federal laws. So in one respect, Discord is the Wild West, with no universal rules, but it can also be one of the most tightly ruled spaces on the internet. Because again, server barons have absolute power, and if you break the rules in their server, you can get kicked with no possibility for recourse. You are, in essence, exiled from their barony. If you'll permit a small diversion from this broader discussion of Discord as feudalism, there is one issue that server barons run into occasionally, or in my case, often. We have to set the rules for our server, and we also have to enforce them, and that can be a very unique problem to deal with in Discord, more so than on social media. If any server exists long enough with enough people in it, there are going to be moments where the owner and or the administrators of the server are going to have to exercise some of their power to handle a situation in that server. This is true no matter how cool the owners and administrators are, and no matter how cool the community is. Sometimes this is really easy. For example, in my server, one of the golden rules is that you're not allowed to be bigoted. We have no tolerance for sexism, homophobia, etc. And sometimes you get a new person who pops into the server because we don't have it locked or anything, and they'll post some shitty thing, and me or one of the moderators will ban them instantly. Clear cut, simple, easy, and there's no lingering bad feelings for anyone, except probably the person who got banned, but they're a troll, so who cares? Other situations are not so simple. For example, we might have a long-standing member of the community who's been in the server for a while, and maybe they say something shitty because they don't know it's harmful, or they're having a bad day, or whatever. Bottom line is, they hurt someone else in the server. Now in this case, the answer isn't as clear-cut. I'm not willing to instantly ban someone because of one bad act when they have a record of past conduct that tells me they're basically a good person who, in one instance, made a mistake. And this even applies if it's a pretty big mistake. Like, sometimes long-standing community members have said things that would have resulted in an instant ban if it was the first thing they'd ever said in the server. But because it isn't, I'm willing to be more lenient with them. But still, no one likes to be criticized. Even if you're good at taking criticism, you probably don't enjoy the experience. And so sometimes they can resent being corrected. Meanwhile, on the other side of the equation, the person who was hurt in the first place can sometimes be annoyed because they feel like a harsher punishment is deserved. They don't have maybe the context for this person that I do, and they're viewing it only from the framework of the incident that just happened, which is understandable. In almost every case where something like this has happened, one or both of the parties involved will usually request that I lay down a hard and fast rule of server conduct that can be used in the future to determine who's right and who's wrong. And also, in almost every case, I refuse to do so. I don't lay down a rule, and I've gotten quite some pushback for my unwillingness to do so. Here's the thing. In my experience, whenever you lay down hard and fast, obey this or else rules in a community of any size, two things will happen. The first is that there will always be exceptions to the rule. As an example, and like I said before, transphobia is absolutely prohibited on my server. But what if someone tells a story about transphobia they experienced? What if they're venting about a transphobic attack they just suffered through? What if they're quoting the transphobic words that were just said to them that ruined their day or week? In this case, I want my server to be a safe place for them to talk about it. I want to be able to support them, and I want the whole Discord server to be able to support them. Of course, it has to be done in the right way. We actually have some specific channels for talking about these sorts of things so that other members of the community don't suddenly have transphobic rhetoric thrown in their face when they're trying to look at Legend of Korra memes. But in this case, even though the person is quote-unquote saying transphobic things, there is no cause to ban them, and I would actually be causing harm by doing so. So maybe the rule should be no transphobia in the server unless you're relating an incident that happened to you in order to vent or for support. But even this isn't universally true. Two trans members of my community should be able to, and sometimes will, make sarcastic jokes to each other or satirize the opinions of TERFs and transphobes by repeating their words in order to make them sound foolish. This is another form of venting, but it's not necessarily relating a personal story. It's just a method of working out some general anger and pain caused by a transphobic culture. If a new person were to come into the server and say these exact same words seriously and unironically, of course they'd be banned. But I'm not going to prohibit a trans member of the server from joking about the topic in a way that maybe relieves some stress for them, as long as they do it in the proper server room and avoid harming other members of the community. As another much less serious example of the issue, let's say someone posts a writing sample in the server to share it with others, and then they receive some writing critiques that they didn't ask for, unsolicited. This can honestly be pretty devastating to some writers, especially those who suffer from anxiety or self-confidence issues. But I'm not going to issue a rule that bans writing critiques from the Discord server, because that is a big reason many people are in the server in the first place. And the moment you try to create a server rule that's complicated to account for all the various times you can and cannot critique someone else's writing, you've got a rule that's so complicated as to be useless. And in addition, someone will always find a way to be a shitty person while still technically following the rule you've set down. And so the law in my Discord server, such as it is, almost always comes down to a judgment call by myself or one of the admins. When someone has gotten hurt, we look at that situation in itself and try to figure out the best way to handle it and what the involved parties should try to do going forwards. And sometimes this is frustrating to people, and I understand that, but I truly do believe that it is the best way to run the server. I really do believe that rules always come down to a judgment call anyway, and so it's better to just admit that up front so that people are keeping their conduct in mind rather than trying to ride the edge of whatever rule I've tried to set in stone. And here's how this relates to the broader conversation about Discord as a platform. If people don't like the way I run and administrate my server, they're allowed to leave. There are a nearly infinite number of server baronies across the Discord landscape. Everyone has its own rules, and the owner of each server has absolute authority and power to enforce those rules. Or not, as they see fit. So if someone doesn't like the way I handle my server, that's fair enough, entirely understandable. You can't run a server in a way that's going to make everybody happy. And so everyone who uses the program is free to spend their time in someone else's domain, which is one advantage that Discord has over, actual real-life feudalism, which most people agree was kind of shit. So the next thing I want to get into is the economic structure of the Discord as feudalism idea. But that part of the discussion is going to have to wait, because this video is already way too long, and so we're going to turn it into a two-parter. I'll be back next week to discuss the rest of my thoughts on it, but I want to hear your thoughts on the topic so far. What do you think about this framework through which to view Discord? Do you think there's something to it, or do you think I'm way off base? Let me know in the comments. So that is all I've got for you today, Rebel. I want to give an extra special shout out to my supporters on Patreon, who are scrolling below my face. If you want to be one of those awesome and incredibly attractive individuals, click on the Patreon link in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next Friday. Bye!